Hello and welcome to the Providence College podcast. My name is Joe Carr. The Providence College soccer teams are having outstanding seasons. As we record this podcast on Tuesday the 23rd, the women's team is 3-2 in the Big East, good for 5th place, and they're 7-1 at home, led by their tremendous goaltender Shelby Hogan. Meanwhile, the Friar men's team is 4-1 in the Big East, good for 2nd place, and a tie with Georgetown. Not only that, but the Hoyas will be in Friartown on Wednesday for a much-anticipated Big East showdown. One of the biggest reasons for this success are guests, Kerry and Karl Anderson. 1988 PC graduates for whom Anderson Stadium is named, they are among PC's most loyal and impactful alumni. Karl and Kerry are having a tremendous impact on their alma mater. In addition to raising a young family in Connecticut, they are very involved in the life of the college. Karl serves on the board of trustees. Karl is a former Friar soccer star himself, and Kerry and Karl are among the Friar's biggest fans, all sports, not only soccer. As a trustee, Karl is a trusted advisor to Athletic Director Bob Driscoll, College President Father Brian Shanley, and the rest of the college leadership. Kerry and Karl, thank you for joining us today.
Sure. Thank you for having us.
So the Georgetown will be over by the time this podcast drops, but the Friars are coming off a tie on the road against Creighton, the top team in the Big East. There's a lot of excitement around this team. I suspect that you share that, and you're looking forward to seeing what happens tomorrow at the stadium.
Yeah, Joe, as we were starting up this call, I think you might have heard me say that I'll be leaving in the morning to come down and watch the game tomorrow night. Kind of worn out that highway over the years, going up to visit the team for the home games, and as you mentioned, not just soccer, but a lot of the other ones. So, big game tomorrow, hoping for a W and put us right up in the lead of the Big East.
What are your thoughts?
Ellen will be watching here.
Oh, good. That's great. You and your sons, right, Kerry?
The boys and I, yep, we'll Chromecast it to the big TV, and we'll be rooting them on.
Well, that sounds like a great way to spend an October evening. What do you think about this team? Last year was not what anybody had really hoped for, but 2 great seasons before that, and now the Friars are right back among the top teams in the league.
Well, I think with the uniqueness of college, where things turn over every year and injuries play such a key role, I think you're seeing a team that went through some pretty good injury issues last year, and then this year it's more of a seasonal issue with some of the key freshmen taking leadership roles, on a pretty good team. If you've watched the game at all, Joe, you'll see the midfield's quite strong, and our defense has been strong. And the one thing we're working on is trying to put the ball in the net a little bit more frequently, and with that does take away some of the pressure on the rest of the team and kind of frees them up to play. So they're doing a little bit better as the season's progressed, but it's been a pretty good defensive season, and that's really what's put us in the position we are in the Big East right now.
I'm happy to report there's a lot of buzz in Friartown about this game. Everybody is talking about it and really anticipating it, so that's a great thing to see. And to have such a wonderful on-campus facility really, I think, heightens interest, and that's had a tremendous impact on the way that the program has integrated within the college community in a lot of ways.
It's been great. It's been great spending time there. It's been great bringing the boys back there. We were up there a couple of weeks ago for that 50th anniversary of soccer. All piled in the car, the dogs, everybody. Karl was already up there for board meetings, and it was a beautiful day, and it was so nice to see so many of the players come back, wearing their old Letterman sweaters, and it was really neat. And for them, they really feel part of, this present team, and they'd be the first ones to tell you that, it was not the program it is today. So it's nice to be a part of that.
Joe, you might have had the opportunity, and I think you're around when Coach Doyle was there as well. It has been one of the positive benefits to bring somebody like that back kind of to the campus after a pretty long-term hiatus. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it's made an impact on the team, but it's also been a really good opportunity to draw people back into campus. And when this was first a discussion with the trustees, there were several of them that really supported it because they thought this is one venue we can get alumni back on campus. And so far, so good.
And incidentally, most of our listeners know this, but that venue is also used for the outstanding lacrosse team in the spring and for intramural sports as well. So it's a very important part of our campus environment in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I'd agree. Since our boys are more in the lacrosse world, whatever soccer legacy I have had is kind of dying, and now I'm just hoping one of them maybe will strut out on the field with a stick in his hand in the future.
Well, that sounds like a good aspiration for sure. Let's talk a little bit about this 50th anniversary season, Karl. I'd like to look at this in a slightly different context. So you graduated in 1988, a very good soccer player here. So you were part of a team. What did that add to your experience as a PC student? How did that flavor what happened to you when you were a student?
Well, I don't know if Father Shanley is going to want me to say this, but if it wasn't for athletics, I don't think admissions would have let me in. So it had quite a big impact on me coming to Providence. You know, as a student athlete coming up through high school, I think it's pretty common for a lot of athletes to have a lot of their really good friends to be from the team. And I would say that that's similar to my experience at Providence, but what was really kind of cool about the whole experience was not only the camaraderie of playing on a Division I team, but the relationships I actually, had with non-student athletes as well. And many of my good friends were high school athletes, but not Division I athletes, and go to all the games with me now and have the same love and interest for Providence and Providence athletics as I do. And I think that also, mirrors what's been going on campus. The statistics I've always heard is 85% of the students at Providence College played athletics in high school, and it's part of the draw of the school itself. So it brought me there. It has a lot to do with why I'm still involved, as kind of a thank you back to the school who took, a shot on me. And so wrapping that up into the 50th and what was going on and why it made it so special was the years around my class, and I won't just say my class alone, but the years around it really were the years that kind of broke through, at least in New England and to a national level. If I'm not mistaken, in '84, I think the team was ranked in the top 10 nationally for a little period of time, but always ranked in New England in the forthcoming years. And so really was the breakthrough period for the program. And, one of the reasons why I always look back on it so fondly.
Kerry, let's talk about your PC experience. You, as Karl alluded to, were here at a remarkable time for PC sports. And one thing that occurs to me is that you were juniors when the basketball team was in the Final Four in New Orleans. Sport's a big part of what you enjoyed about being a PC student too, and a part of your experience?
Absolutely. It's kind of funny. Karl and I joke all the time that, his college years were the athletic, very active years. And I was on the sidelines. And now, sometimes it tends to be a little role reversal where I'll be out there running or doing some activity and he'll be watching. But it was a big part of our college career. There was the basketball team was great. We, would go to all the soccer games. My best friend, dated a soccer player, so we were all there. All of our friends were very big enthusiasts, and whether it was, downtown basketball or on campus, we loved it.
Just to throw one more in there, if you remember, the freshman year as well was the year that hockey lost in the NCAA finals.
Right.
So it really was a great 4 years for athletics, and I would say it really hasn't been similar to that until more recently with the success basketball's had and hockey's had and some of the runs that the soccer team have had. So that's, brings back some pretty cool memories. That
great Chris Terreri Team Army team that lost, 2-1, right, to RPI in the championship game? Oh, boy. Close, very
Adam
close.
Oates.
Took a little while to finally get over the hump there and get that one back, but eventually it happened, and that was certainly exciting. With alumni, and in fact anybody in our community, when we do these interviews, we like to talk about the pathway to PC. Maybe we could start with you, Kerry. Where did you grow up? How did you end up here as a Friar?
I grew up in Larchmont, New York. I'm the middle child of three. I have an older sister who went to BC, and a younger brother who's class of 95 at Providence. It's funny, that older sister almost negated my even applying to Providence. I said to Karl before, I'm like, did I ever tell you that I almost didn't get to apply to Providence? And it was, long story short, but we're less than 2 years apart. And, my dad did the college visits with my sister, And then it came time for me, and she had her heart set on BC all along. And, I guess same day they saw Providence, and it was a rainy day, and they, went into Harkins, had an interview, and left, and just thought it was very depressing. And, fast forward 2 years, my guidance counselors were saying, this is a perfect school. You're looking for a small liberal arts school with a strong business program. You really should look at Providence. And I was like, well, my dad didn't like it. So I begged them to let me go with that same best friend, Amy, when she was going up for an interview. And, didn't know what they were talking about. Loved it. And, came back. And the same day that my father and I had gone to see Stonehill, I said, please, can we just, I think it's Route 40 or 44, can we just please, will you just drive through it again? Will you give it a chance? And he did, and he too loved it. And to this day, he would tell you if he had a fourth child and it was between Providence and BC, he would send them to Providence.
Good decision. That's right.
Just from the experience that both my brother and I are 8 years apart, but just we were two very different people, but we both have the same, strong set of friends, same strong experience there. He just, and from the family, my parents, they loved it. They had a great experience. So it's all good.
Well, the good news is now the sun shines every day, so we don't have that problem anymore, right?
And there's no more ivy. I remember her always saying there was all this ivy on Harkins, and it was so depressing. I'm like, what are you talking about? By the time I had seen it, the ivy was gone. So
long gone. Karl, did you have other places that you were looking at, perhaps for soccer?
It really came down to three schools for me at the end. One was University of Hartford, which was going Division I and was kind of flush with scholarship money, and that was only 20 minutes from home for me because I grew up in Simsbury, Connecticut, and part of the reason I didn't want to go there is that was close enough to have my mom call me to bring me home to mow the lawn. So I didn't really want to do that. And then it actually came down to Brown and Providence. And the predecessors in high school for me, the two prior captains, had both gone to Brown. And you know what? I was a pretty immature kid at the time, but I was mature enough to know I was immature. And I thought Providence, which was a better team at the time, which definitely had a little bit to do with it, but I also thought the structure of the school was going to be more helpful for me to kind of grow up and get through it. And I thought Brown, although a really good school, was much more relaxed. And I just didn't see that fit. So it really came down to those three. I looked at others, and like I said, I wasn't carrying the best academic track record. So that actually hurt my options, but ultimately put me in the right place. And Coach Doyle and PC gave me a chance. And like I said, that's a lot of the reasons we do what we do.
So it sounds as if you met here. Is that correct? We don't want to make an assumption. It may not be true.
Yeah, we were kidding around about that. I think it was the first week because we were in the same accounting class together. And candidly, I don't think I won her over right off the bat.
Definitely not.
Okay, fair enough then. But this is a common story, right?
Class heckler. Yeah, we did meet early on and kind of fell into the same friend group all along, all 4 years, and then following graduation. But we didn't start dating. Actually, Karl was a rent-a-date of mine. I had a black tie event that I had to go to. I was living in New York at the time. I had to go to a black tie event, and that same friend Amy, was saying, "Oh, don't go alone. Why don't you call Karl? He just, broke up with so and so." And it was just like, Karl, really? We've done this, or we've tried this before. Like, all right, fine. So we went, and we had a great time, and started dating, and we're engaged 10 months later, and then I've been married now for 15 years. So, but that was 15 years after graduation. So when they say don't, burn your bridges, or don't, write off anyone in your past, don't, because you never know.
Hey, Joe, I think in all candor, we have to open up the maybe Pandora's box in this, but as Kerry references her friend Amy is an 88 grad, and her maiden name was Pete, Amy Pete. She's now Amy Pace. Well, my college roommate was Rich Pace, and it's probably a little too close when people look at it, that the roommates married roommates.
And Amy and I I mean, when I say grown up together, we went to grammar school, high school, and college together since second grade. We've been buds.
And then Rich was my roommate, played on the soccer team, and then worked with me up until a year ago at Columbus Circle. So, yeah, it's kind of close. And to make it even funnier, that freshman year, Rich asked Amy to go to a blind date ball with me, and she said no, which, well, can't be that surprising. But, yeah, it's a pretty close group. And to kind of bring that to full circle, there's probably 30 people, I'd say, that are all alum from our class that get together twice a year, typically once at our house and then once somewhere else. And it's amazing how many of these friends and alumni currently have kids at Providence College or just recent grads. So it's been a pretty cool experience. And it's one of those things that's hard to explain to people when they ask about Providence. Kind of gotten used to saying the longer you've been out, the more special it'll appear to you, which I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing, but it's how I've always felt about it. And I think a lot of people share those memories in a similar fashion.
Well, certainly in this context, it sounds like a very good thing. And it's interesting, isn't it, that is such a sort of common refrain among alumni and other people associated with the college. So many of these similar stories. And the reporter in me now thinks we need to track down Amy and Rich and get the rest of this story, right?
It's not hard. Rich and Amy have stayed fairly active. You know, Rich comes, and his oldest, Rich Jr., just graduated last year from PC. So, yeah, no, they're close friends, and they're down in Larchmont as well, where Kerry grew up. So we say them not as regular as when Rich and I used to walk into the office together, but on a pretty regular basis.
Karl, tell us a little more about your career. You mentioned Columbus Circle and investments, and fill us in a little bit more on that in your professional life.
Yeah, well, it's kind of interesting. I end up doing this a bit because if I can digress 1 second, the fun part for the school and my relationship to the school right now is really the students. And having to tell this story to a lot of them, you know, everybody's looking for kind of a recipe of how do you do things. And my recipe is a little bit more of a concoction on how my career kind of went along. As I came out, I went right into sales. You know, a lot of those jobs way back when were not the most attractive, and it had a lot to do with knocking on doors and calling people and trying to sell them things, and even to the point where, you know, it was 100% commission. So it was kind of unique. You didn't sell anything at the end of the month. You kind of got a little hungry. And so I did that job for about 5 years and kind of moved up through the ranks because a lot of those jobs have a lot of turnover, and then got promoted to run one of the offices down in Manhattan. And so I moved from where I was up near Hartford down to Manhattan, and that's what kind of got me down in this neck of the woods. And then I went on to work at GE and sold MRIs and CAT scanners and stuff for the medical division of General Electric. And one of the things I learned is I didn't really like being part of a big company. I liked the day-to-day stuff of being measured, and that was one of the benefits that the sales world always provided. You know, what did you do today? And so I was contacted and took a flyer on a startup company out of Colorado Springs, and that only lasted about a year and a half. Two things I learned out of that is, one, make sure the startup chairman has more than one speech, because he didn't. And the second thing was I ended up acquiring a friend from life from the West Coast, and that alone made the year and a half worthwhile. And then ultimately, as that was kind of winding down, a friend of mine, Tony Rizza, who played soccer at UConn, and if the name rings a bell, he's the main donor for their new soccer facility, which I think starts in a couple weeks. We had gotten to be pretty close friends after college, and he had kind of just tracked my career. And he wanted the sales guy to come in and work with him. And so it was an opportunity to go into the finance world, and it was attend meetings, attend the investment meetings, read, get a few licenses, and then throw you in the deep end of the pool. And so that was in 1998, and I stepped away and retired from Columbus Circle after the firm was acquired in January of last year. So it's not a direct path. I would tell you this is one of the benefits of a liberal arts school, where it taught you how to think, and it wasn't just a book smart thing. It kind of broadened how you looked at things, and I give Providence College a lot of credit, especially, and I hate to say this, to the kids going through it right now, but Western civilization had a lot to do with how you think about life and how you address issues, and I give it a lot of credit for any success I've had.
You said something a moment ago I'd like to come back to, Karl. You enjoyed being measured day to day. I wonder if any of that relates to having been a successful athlete, because practice every day, a game once in a while, certainly being assessed regularly by coaches and teammates. Do you think there's a connection there?
Yeah, I think having always been in sales and in a role of where I've hired and fired, unfortunately, there's a competitive nature that you want to see in people. And, people always said, well, how do you know if somebody's going to be successful in whatever? And the best answer I've ever heard is find somebody who's passionate about it, and ultimately they'll be successful. And if you're passionate about it, you want to know how you're doing. And, in the basic sales world of coming right out of college, I knew because, you had a spreadsheet of saying, here's what you sold and this is what you made. I wouldn't want to do it again, but I wouldn't trade it for the world. And so I think even when it comes to practicing as an athlete, you're in drills going head to head against somebody. I mean, you want to beat that person. Never mind the games. And then hopefully people are prouder about the name on the front of their jersey and that team winning versus the name on the back of the jersey, which you hear that a lot. But that individual has to win their matches to help the team win that game. And you're measured. And if you're afraid of being measured, then it's probably pretty hard to be successful. What you get in smaller companies like Columbus Circle is there's no place to hide. If you do your job real well, it'll be recognized. And if you don't, that'll be recognized as well. And I do think, at least from my mindset, that was something I much preferred to a corporate setting where there's so many people you can hide. So that's always been my issue, right or wrong, but how I always liked it.
Kerry, what's it like to have an entire hungry soccer team show up at your house, as the Friars did a couple of weeks ago on their way to Seton Hall? That must be interesting.
It does make for an interesting Thursday, that's for sure. But I really can't think of one downside. I think there were 27 good-looking, in-shape college athletes that are some of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. And some of these, we've traveled to Italy with. You really feel like you've known them. We go to a lot of the games, and that's not really the time to have any sort of relationship with these athletes. But when you're traveling with them, or when you're out of practice, or when you're there for preseason, it's if we're on our way, most times vacation-wise, we'll stop there on the way up or the way back, and we'll get to see them in action. And it's nice. You really get to know these kids. And when they're passing through to go to a game at Seton Hall, it's nice that they think to stop. The only problem is that our boys were so disappointed that they were at school. And of course, Mommy and Daddy took lots of pictures of the big Friar bus out, dropping off at the foot of the driveway. And that's the first time that's ever happened. They couldn't believe they missed it, and they were really bummed that they missed it. But I hope they do it again. Just really, really nice guys.
And Joe, Kerry mentioned we went over with the team to Italy a few years ago. When they took that trip, they can do once every 4 years, like basketball did this past summer with Italy, and we helped set up some stuff just from contacts over there, and they're like, "Hey, Karl, you got to come, got to bring the family." And so, we weren't over for the full 10 days, but I think we were over for 4 or 5, and we got off the plane and just jumped on a bus with the team, and my 2 boys at the time, which I guess would have been 10 and 9, just disappeared. The kids just took them, and now when we go to a game or they're watching it on TV, the kids know these kids and their affinity for the players in the school. I don't have to ask my kids where they want to go to college. They can go wherever they want, but I think I'm going to be 2 for 2.
So student athletes, generally speaking, take their cues when it comes to how they conduct themselves from their coach or coaching staff. But let's talk specifically about the head coach in this case, Craig Stewart. What are your observations relative to Coach Stewart?
Well,
the whole team is such a nice staff. I don't think you could ask for anything more.
So the situation is pretty unique in the fact that when Chaka Daly, who's now the Michigan coach, stepped away, we we had just come out of the NCAAs a couple of years, and so it was a unique position for Providence where we were hiring from a position of strength from athletics. And I give Bob a lot of credit for who he's hired and so much of what's been done on campus. A lot of times we would have to take a flyer on a young coach that was up and coming because we weren't going to get some real senior guys at that time. But when we went to hire the new coach, there was over 100 applicants for the job, and it ranged from schools that are in the Big East, where there were head coaches that were applying to leave their school to come to Providence, a bunch of other schools as well, Atlantic 10, etc., and then a lot of the high-profile schools, maybe it was the head assistant or something, was looking at it. Well, ultimately, the way it works is typically the resumes go out and everybody kind of ranks them who's on the committee, and ultimately you get it down to a number of maybe 8 or 10, and then you have phone interviews, and then you invite 4 on campus and then hire out of that. And ultimately, when we did that whole process, it came down to the last 2, and one was Craig Stewart, who obviously is the head coach, and the other one was John Marc-Andre, who's our assistant head coach. And John Mark was an assistant here before. He was a great All-American in high school out of Rhode Island and played at Syracuse. And these 2 guys had been on the staff in the past, and we knew that they would both stay together. And so as great as Craig Stewart is, and he came to us from Franklin Pierce with a record, I think, of 57-3 over 3 years and a bunch of Final Four appearances. We got to keep, arguably one of the top assistants in the country and hire this new head coach. And the 2 of them are perfect together. The lack of ego between them, their caring and direction for the kids, the type of kids they recruit, it really is an amazing group. And so, when they're having one of their Elite 8 or Final Four runs, it's a euphoric time. And unfortunately, when you have a down year to injuries, I don't think I see 2 coaches take it harder than they do. It's just a great group, and they recruit the people they think will fit. And so we've got a lot of talented young kids, but it's a team that averages over a 3.0 GPA on a regular basis and competes for Big East championships and makes some pretty good runs. So I don't think we could be any more fortunate than having those 2 on staff.
Well, thank you for adding that context. It's important to think of coaching in terms of coaching staffs because it's a big job with any of these sports for sure. Karl, could you describe a little bit to our audience how the trustees work as with respect to the athletic department? So we have a committee of the Board of Trustees that deals directly with varsity athletics. How is that relationship, and what are sort of the finer points of all that, how that all works?
Well, it's the trustees and the school itself hasn't been in a better spot than it is currently. And part of that is, the diversification you get amongst all the people. You want to be getting creative ideas from everybody. So it's really come a long way, and that's really under, Father Shanley's tutelage, and now the chairman being Chris Riley, who's a big athletic supporter as well, specifically in hockey. I'm fortunate enough to chair the Varsity Athletics Committee for the trustees. And, if you think about having somebody like Doris Burke, who was on the committee, or Rich Gotham, who's the president of the Celtics, I mean, you're really talking about a wealth of knowledge and talent, giving ideas on how to market, how to do ticketing, how to do the branding. I mean, the new development center, so many of the ideas that we got were from going up to the Celtics new center or, visiting different facilities around the country. So the depth and breadth of the trustees in support has been great. What's happened over time, which I'm delighted by, is I think several years back, you would actually kind of debate on what the best use of a dollar was. And I don't mean taking a dollar away from buying a new book in a library versus buying a new basketball. I mean, what do we really want to do? And what can athletics do for the school? And so what we've kind of seen over the time, and you see this working in the administration, we're getting a very diverse geographic admissions base. Our diversity as a whole is at its peak with this freshman class that we've had. Recognition, our yield rates on admissions, all these things have gotten very strong. And it's for a multitude of reasons, but one of the reasons has been the branding athletics has brought to the school, the TV contract with Fox, so that people are seeing us on national TV. And obviously the success of the basketball program helps, and And as we all know, Coach Cooley's an amazing ambassador to the school. So all those things kind of in concert has really positioned athletics in the minds of the trustees as, well, this is part of what makes Providence. It doesn't take away from the Catholic institution or the great educational institution it is. It's just, I guess, another way that we're identified. And so I can tell you, over the last few years, I've never been more pleased or excited about how it's viewed, the place that it sits. I continually tell the board when I start talking about it that the school's not here to serve athletics. Athletics is here to serve the board. And as part of that, we need to be winning championships. We need to be getting good grades and graduating our student athletes. And if we're going to get it in the paper, it better be for a really good reason. And we've had that. And I think that's once again, kind of the backbone or the spine of what the school provides. And part of it's been the leadership of Bob Driscoll so that people do understand the expectations of a student athlete when they come to Providence.
Kerry, Karl referenced the several parallel tracks upon which this success is running in athletics, success in competition, success in academics, great facilities. So as an alum and someone very involved in athletics from a number of perspectives, sort of a basic question, but how does all this momentum make you feel?
Well, it's not, in this house, it's not something that just Karl enjoys or just I enjoy. I think because of, it's a family, and it's something our family does together. I mean, here's a great example. Next week, the soccer team is playing at St. John's, about a 40-minute ride from here. It happens to be on Halloween. And Karl posed to the boys over the weekend, hey, guys, PC Soccer's playing Halloween night, at St. John's. Do you want to go trick-or-treating, or do you want to go to the game? They both, without hesitation, they want to go to the game. So, Saturday night, Karl was out of town, coming home. He was home by halftime, but Tate and I were here, and, we were watching the game together. Our other one was at a sleepover. But it's something we all do together. So the success, like any true fan, you have to be there for the highs and the lows. But the highs always help. But it's a great thing that we can do with the boys. And it's not just the one sport. We'll go up for hockey, we'll go up for basketball. We have had a couple of occasions if soccer is going postseason. We have been able to do all three in one day, just depending on timing. It is. Yep, check a lot of boxes that day. It's exhausting, but it works. But all the stars have to align for that. But it's just great. It's definitely a favorite family activity that we do together.
Just on a funny side note, as I mentioned, my youngest plays some competitive lacrosse on a club team. And the funniest thing is there's three of the kids with both parents being PC alum, all wearing Friar helmets instead of the club team's helmet. So we're doing everything we can to help the branding and to get it out there, but it really is a small world when you start getting involved in some of this stuff.
You've been very generous with your time, and I really appreciate that. One more question, if you don't mind. What does it feel like when you walk into Anderson Stadium on game night?
It feels like being home, anywhere on that campus. It's just a great proud feeling. It's great to be able to watch the games there, but as soon as I get off that exit, I feel at home. I had a great 4-year experience there. 30 years out, we still have a lot of very, very close friends, and we're lucky that we get to go back often. So for me, it's just a very familiar coming home. And even, whether it's the new stadium or it's, Harkins, I love going back.
Joe, I would add just a couple of points. First, it turned out better than I could have hoped it would. And it's just because you had people all involved that really knew that this is the one chance at a bite of the apple, if you would. And so, whether it's Bob Driscoll or John Sweeney, or the coaches and the input they had, I'm guessing I'm surprised in saying that it turned out better than I could have hoped. And that's no indication anything other than I had some pretty high expectations anyway. So it means a lot. And, my kids love being around it. It's not just Kerry and I. They'll go there any chance they get. Typically, one of them's always moseying around and the other one's yelling at a ref. So they're enjoying that experience as well. But, it's always been, one, you'd always be proud that you went to Providence, and being able to stick your chest out and say, at least in my case, it was soccer and others lacrosse or hockey, whatever it may be.